The story I want to tell you today takes place in Saitama Prefecture, Japan. Saitama is a prefecture located in the southeast of Japan, within the greater Tokyo area. In the southeast of Saitama Prefecture, there is a city called Misato, located about 20 kilometers from Tokyo and covering an area of 30,000 square meters. The story unfolds here. The main character of the story is Junko, born on January 18, 1971. At the time of the incident, she was only 17 years old and a student at Rasio Minami High School in Saitama Prefecture. She had a cheerful personality and a sweet appearance, making her well-liked by her fellow students. Her father was a sales manager at a canned goods factory, and her mother was a housewife. Besides her parents, she had an older brother and a younger brother. The family's financial situation was not affluent, with the father being the sole breadwinner. To lessen the burden on her father, Junko decided to work after graduating from high school. Besides studying at school, she worked part-time as a salesperson at a household goods store or as a packer at a plastic factory to support her family. As she was about to graduate from high school, she applied for an interview at a company and successfully passed the selection process. After graduation, she could start working at the company. This was like a new journey in her life. However, no one could have imagined that one day on her way home from work, she would encounter a demon, and what happened afterward would make anyone who heard it feel heartbroken. Let's turn back time to November 25, 1988. On November 25, 1988, it was a beautiful Friday. As usual after school, Junko went to work part-time at a plastic factory. At 8:20 p.m., Junko finished work and began heading home. She grabbed her bag and rode her bicycle towards her home. There were only a few streetlights along the way, and there were hardly any pedestrians. Suddenly, a stranger on a motorcycle approached her from behind and kicked her, causing both her and her bike to fall to the ground. Before she could react, the man on the motorcycle quickly fled. As she struggled to stand up, a young man came to her aid and told her that the man was from the underworld and had been stalking her. He also warned her that the man might come back to harm her and offered to escort her home for safety. At that moment, still dizzy from the fall and not fully understanding what had happened, Junko felt that the young man in front of her was kind-hearted. So she walked alongside him, limping as she led her bike. After walking for a while, they reached a secluded area with no people around. The young man stopped and revealed that he was also a member of a local gang, and that the man on the motorcycle was his accomplice. His name was Hiroshi Murano, 18 years old, and he was currently out of school. He then attacked her and told her that if she spent the night with him, he would let her go. Otherwise, she would die. Out of fear, Junko agreed to his demands. At 9:50 p.m., Hiroshi took her to a nearby hotel and committed heinous acts against her. However, he did not keep his promise to let her go home. Instead, a more sinister idea formed in his mind. He arranged to meet 3 other accomplices at a park. The 3 were Jonda Shinji, Minato Yasushi, and Watanabe, the man on the motorcycle, Junko. The 3 young men waited in a car at the park. Shortly after, Hiroshi brought Junko to meet them. The 4 men searched her bag and found a diary with her home address in it. They threatened to come to her house and kill her entire family if she tried to escape. Terrified, Junko believed they might really do it, though she had no choice but to obey them. After some discussion, the group of 4 decided to take her to Shinji's house. His home was located in Ayase, Adachi Ward, Tokyo. Shinji's house was a 2-story building with an electric gate outside. He often brought friends over. Over the phone, Junko's parents did not notice anything unusual. They thought their daughter was staying at a friend's house and did not report it to the police. 2 days later, on November 28th, 4 young men felt bored and wanted something more entertaining. So, they called 2 more friends over to join the fun. The noise from the room was so loud that it attracted the attention of Shinji's father, who had just returned from a trip. When questioned, Shinji told his father that Junko was his new girlfriend and asked him not to disturb them. Then all 6 men took turns assaulting her. Out of fear, Junko endured it, which pleased the 6 men. In the following days, Junko was continuously taken advantage of by them. One day, when Shinji's mother went upstairs to clean, she accidentally saw Junko there. She knew her son had brought a girl over before, but did not expect the girl to stay. So, she asked Junko to leave. However, a few days later, she still saw Junko upstairs and again asked her to go home. Afterward, she gave up and did not question her son further. At that time, it was December, and the weather outside was very cold. 4 young men often gathered at Shinji's house for fun. They even forced Junko to strip and dance to music. Sometimes they forced her to stand naked on the second-floor balcony, which made her faint from the cold. Subsequently, Junko continuously endured their indescribable demands. To prevent her parents from calling the police, Hiroshi occasionally made her call home to reassure them. Seeing her obedience, they threatened her even more. When they felt tired, one of the 4 would stay to take care of Junko, while the others went out to get food, and then continued their fun with her. On returning, Hiroshi even recorded the moments with a camcorder and forced Junko to watch them. One day, Hiroshi deceived Junko by telling her that her parents had died in a car accident. Seeing her sadness brought him joy, and he then revealed it was just a joke. The group continued to use similar psychological torment against her. During this time, one member of the group considered letting her go, but was discovered and warned by the others. They resumed their abuse of her. By that point, Junko was in a desperate state and called for help. Shinji's parents, who were downstairs, heard the commotion but did nothing because they feared the youths. On December 7, 1988, the 13th day of her captivity, the 6 men had stayed up late and were asleep. Over the previous period, Junko had endured tremendous physical and mental suffering. However, she managed to put on her clothes, crawl downstairs, find a phone, and call the police. Before she could explain her situation, Hiroshi caught her, angrily ended the call, and dragged her back upstairs. He then called the operator, claiming it was a prank by his friends. Next, he went upstairs and poured gasoline on her legs, setting them on fire as punishment. This resulted in severe burns that prevented her from walking. The others followed suit, burning other parts of her body. Her wounds began to fester and emit a foul odor due to the lack of medical care. Shinji's parents noticed something was wrong, but were too scared of the young men to intervene. Shinji's older brother, who lived on the second floor, also knew about Junko. Out of fear, he didn't call the police and only occasionally brought her milk, bread, and other food. Due to the burns, Junko couldn't move and was forced to lie on the floor, unable to use the bathroom properly. Some of the group members treated the room as a hangout spot, further abusing her. Junko's actions of relieving herself on the floor angered Hiroshi, who forced her to eat her feces. Gradually, they provided her with less and less food, sometimes just a carton of milk or a few pieces of bread, sometimes nothing. Hiroshi even beat her for soiling the floor. They continued to beat her, especially in the face, causing her face to swell and become disfigured. They found great amusement in this. By then, Junko was in critical condition. To them, she was merely an object for their pleasure. But now, she was dirty, smelly, and unable to fulfill their desires. However, they had no intention of letting her go, fearing police intervention. They then devised an even more sinister plan. On the 41st day of her captivity, 6:30 a.m., Hiroshi arrived at Shinji's house, visibly angry. He had lost over 100,000 yen gambling the previous night and was frustrated. Seeing Junko lying on the dirty, smelly floor, he vented his anger on her. By then, Junko's consciousness was fading, and she struggled to make any sound. Her feet were immobile due to gangrene, leaving her at their mercy. After assaulting her, Hiroshi still felt unsatisfied. He found a dumbbell with a 1.7 kilograms weight on one end. They repeatedly hit her in the abdomen with the dumbbell for 2 hours. The next morning, January 5th, they discovered Junko had died. They had prepared for this possibility. Hiroshi borrowed a truck from his former workplace and stole some yellow sand, cement, and bricks from a nearby building materials store. He also stole a 60 centimeters diameter, 90 centimeters high metal drum from a construction site. First, they wrapped Junko in a blanket and placed her in a suitcase. They then drove to an empty lot and put her in the metal drum. Hiroshi, being superstitious, believed that Junko might come back as a ghost to seek revenge. Therefore, He placed a VHS tape of a Japanese TV drama called Dragonfly inside the drum. This was Junko's favorite show, often mentioned during her captivity. The group mixed the cement and filled the drum, sealing it with tape. At 8 p.m., they drove to Tokyo Bay, intending to dump the drum into the sea. However, due to traffic, they feared a police check and instead headed to Kasa Seaside Park near Tokyo Bay. They dumped the drum in a grassy area by the road to destroy the evidence. Afterward, they thoroughly cleaned the truck and returned to Shinji's house, destroying any evidence linked to Junko. On January 23, 1989, 18 days after Junko's death, Hiroshi and Adora were arrested by the police for previously assaulting another girl. Initially, they thought the police had found Junko's body and confessed to some details of the case. Later, they realized they were arrested for a different incident. Both then confessed to their crimes during the ongoing investigation and were held at a juvenile detention center in Mabuko Ward, Okio. Based on their statements, the police became suspicious and believed they might be involved in another case, leading to a search of their residence. On March 29, 1989, 2 months after Junko's death, 2 investigators found women's underwear at Hiroshi's house, suggesting involvement in other cases. Subsequently, the police interrogated Hiroshi and Adora separately. During the interrogation, Hiroshi thought Adora had confessed to Junko's death and revealed the entire story. On March 30, 1989, the case was officially investigated. Following Hiroshi's provided location, police found the drum containing Junko's body. Her remains were in a state of decomposition, making identification challenging. Police confirmed her identity through fingerprint comparison. The autopsy revealed severe disfigurement. Nearly all her teeth were broken, metal pins in her chest, ruptured intestinal wall, torn scalp with only the skin left, and foreign objects in her uterus. Additionally, glass fragments were found inside her body, and she was pregnant. Police traced the phone call Junko had made to her parents, leading them to Shinji's house and successfully apprehending the group of young men, including Shinji's older brother. The group of 7 was then prosecuted. Among the 4 original perpetrators, Hiroshi was the primary culprit. They were all between 16 and 18 years old. This case was an extremely serious instance of juvenile delinquency. The police subsequently conducted a thorough investigation into each individual's background. They discovered that Hiroshi, 18, had a stockbroker father and a piano teacher mother. Despite a relatively affluent family background, Hiroshi's parents were busy with work, leaving him to be raised by his grandmother. He returned to live with his parents upon graduating from elementary school. Due to a lack of parental care during his formative years, Hiroshi's relationship with his parents was strained. To compensate, parents overlooked his mistakes and tried to meet his material and financial needs. In middle school, he joined the judo club and learned some martial arts skill. In March 1988, Hiroshi dropped out of high school and got involved with bad elements in society. Despite his family's efforts to keep him away from these influences and get him to work at a construction material company, Hiroshi refused. In a prolonged argument, he even hit his mother. Upon discovering this, his father immediately kicked him out of the house. Hiroshi then gathered a group of delinquent youths who had also dropped out of school, forming a gang known as the Radical Youth Association. He became the gang leader, living off extortion and robbery. The suspect, Adora, 17, was one of Hiroshi's followers. His father worked in transportation and his mother worked at a hotel. His parents divorced when he was in 3rd grade and he lived with his mother. In middle school, he met Hiroshi and quickly dropped out to join Hiroshi's gang. The suspect, Shinji Minato, 16, had a father who was the administrative director of a hospital and a mother who was a nurse. His parents often quarreled at home. After each argument, his father would vent his anger on him and his older brother. Growing up in such an environment, Shinji became increasingly irritable and frequently attacked his classmate. One day, Shinji's brother had his motorcycle stolen. To retrieve it, he sought Hiroshi's help, and the two became close friends. Occasionally, to avoid his father's beatings, Shinji would invite Hiroshi's gang over. Shinji's father was very displeased with the group but was too scared to act against them. Over time, he gave up on Shinji. His mother was helpless and refrained from intervening. Yasushi Waka, 17, came from a broken home with divorced parents. He lived with his mother and sister, with his mother working at a beauty salon and often busy with work. In middle school, Hiroshi pursued Yasushi's sister, leading to their acquaintance. Given the severity and heinous nature of the crimes they committed, they should have been tried as adults. This was a grave and unprecedented crime in Japan's history. The defendants acted out of sheer hatred towards the victim, who suffered unimaginable physical and mental abuse. Although they confessed to the crimes in court, their defense lawyers argued that the defendants were minors and had no intention of killing Junko. They claimed the continued assaults were not meant to end her life. On May 21, 1990, after a long 10-month trial, the case concluded. Hiroshi was sentenced to 17 years in prison. Adora received 5 to 10 years, Shinji received 4 to 6 years, and Yasushi received 3 to 4 years. 3 of the remaining 7 accomplices were also detained in juvenile reformatories. The prosecution, however, was dissatisfied with the verdicts, considering them too lenient, and appealed to the Tokyo High Court. On July 12, 1990, a year later, the Tokyo High Court issued a new judgment. With the exception of Omega, who maintained his original sentence, the sentences for the other 3 were increased. Hiroshi was sentenced to 20 years, Shinji to 5 to 9 years, and Yasushi to 5 to 7 years. Nonetheless, the prosecution was still unhappy with these rulings. The Tokyo High Court explained that under Japanese law at the time, perpetrators were all minors and thus eligible for leniency. After the verdict, the parents of the 4 minor defendants expressed a desire to kneel and apologize to Junko's family, hoping for an opportunity for their children to rehabilitate. But their request was refused. Following a civil court order, Hiroshi's mother sold her house and provided 50 million yen, about $336,000, current rates, as compensation to Junko's family through a lawyer. Adora's father deposited a significant portion of his income into a bank account managed by a lawyer. Shinji's parents, although aware of the situation, were not prosecuted. Dissatisfied, Junko's family filed a civil lawsuit against them, which led to Shinji's parents being held accountable for their negligence. In 1995, Yasushi was released after serving his sentence. Due to frequent bullying in prison, he developed anthropophobia, fear of people. After his release, he became reclusive, staying mostly at home. In 1997, Shinji was released and left Masato City with his family, struggled to find employment. In August 2018, he was arrested again for causing injury and was sentenced to 18 months in prison. In 1999, Adora was released and later changed his name to Johannisaku, marrying a woman shortly thereafter. However, in 2003, he was arrested again on another charge and sentenced to 4 more years in prison. In 2009, Hiroshi was paroled and changed his name to Yokoyama Hiroshi. Despite being released, he was arrested again in 2013 for fraud. This case stands as one of the most grotesque crimes in the history of juvenile delinquency in Japan. Despite committing these heinous acts as minors, the perpetrators continued to reoffend even after serving their sentences, despite swearing never to commit another crime. The incident sparked a nationwide debate on Japan's juvenile criminal laws, with some advocating for lowering the minimum age for criminal responsibility. This case illustrates the profound influence of family upbringing on juvenile delinquency. Had there been timely intervention, such a tragedy might have been prevented. Despite the passage of decades, this remains one of the most haunting cases in Japanese criminal history. The case of Junko Furuta is not only a heartbreaking tragedy, but also a story that we should remember as we work together to build a better society. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you found it helpful and would like to support us, please like, share your thoughts in the comments section, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any of our upcoming content. Wishing you all peace and well-being, and see you in the next video.